Hello, we're back. It's a Thursday live stream to help you with your English, and I've really missed not doing this over the summer. And
Have you?
Yes, I have actually. I
Yeah.
have, and obviously not seeing my good friend Lynn. So
Yes.
if you've just joined us and you have no idea what this is, we're going to help you with your English. We're two English teachers. My name's Craig. I'm an English teacher online at the moment, 100% online, but I have written material for the website mansioningles.com where Spanish speakers can study English, and we also have some paid material there for people who would like to study on their phone. And we have a podcast at inglespodcast.com. When I say we, not Lynn and I, but myself and another friend do a weekly podcast for any speaker of any language who wants to learn English. And if you want to speak English, go to the website englishcraig.com, where you'll find details of my conversation courses. We're in the middle of a lovely course with some wonderful students in small groups, and next week they finish, and then in 2 weeks the new courses will be starting. So if you'd like to practice your English, send me an email and I'll explain more. And Lynn, let me introduce.
That way.
Yes. Why don't you introduce yourself to anyone who doesn't know you?
Yeah, well, I'm a bit more straightforward. I only have one website. Craig has many. He has a hand in every pie. But I'm a little bit simpler. My website is called putitlikethis.com. I am also an online teacher, and I kind of specialize in tailor making courses for people with different objectives. So first of all, I have a chat with you and find out what your objectives are in English, which areas you want to improve. Maybe it's you want to pass an exam, or maybe you don't want an exam, but you just want to be able to talk English, speak English well on holiday, or maybe you need to improve your writing in English, or maybe you're a business person and you need to improve your spoken English because you do a lot of presentations. People have all sorts of different aims, and I try to create a course to help you achieve your objectives. So if you're interested, go to putitlikethis.com and you can find out more details of the kinds of courses I run, and you can also get in touch with me over the website.
Okay, putitlikethis.com is Lynn's webpage. Now, some of you may be watching for the first time, in which case, welcome. Please say hi. Tell us where you're from or where you're based at the moment. And for people who have seen us before on live streams, we've got some changes, haven't we, Lynn? We've been thinking over the summer, and we've decided to mix it up a bit, to do a couple of changes. So what's the new?
So we thought, well, I'm always trying to figure out why you're actually listening to us, because I know that you have very different needs. Some people are listening to us because they want the listening practice and they enjoy watching and participating in the live streams. But some people have very concrete aims as well. And I know that many of you are trying to prepare to do some kinds of exams to achieve different levels. And so we're not going to make it exam based, really. That's not our aim. It will still be a stream of the kinds of videos that we've done up to now, but we're trying to do it a little bit more systematically. Now, many students say to me, and I think maybe to you too, Craig, you tell me, but they say to me that the problem with all of the exams is when they do the speaking and when they do the writing, they just can't think of things to say or write. They run out of ideas and they don't know what to say. So we're not going to be helping you with the techniques of the exam at all, but we thought we would maybe every second live stream, we're going to dedicate one live stream around a topic. And that topic is to try to inspire you with some ideas about the kinds of topics they use in exams. So we're going to be talking today, for example, about tourism, but we've shifted the focus to like a blessing or a curse. So we're going to be discussing the advantages and disadvantages of tourism, because there are a lot of questions in the speaking and in the writing that are based on tourism, for example. And we thought we'll do that twice a month. So one class will dedicate to like a topic, and then the other class, Craig, you can tell them the other class, the focus of the class will be
Yeah,
more.
the other class, well, just to add something to what Lynn said, the vocabulary areas that we'll be focusing on, for example, today tourism, are areas that we've taken from the Cambridge exams, the what we call the upper suite exams. So the B2, the C1 advanced, the B2 first, C1 advanced, and the proficiency. So there are areas that are quite common, and you can find these topic areas online. We'll be focusing on specific areas that Cambridge have said these are the vocabulary areas for these exams. So we haven't just picked them out of the air. They are specific
No.
Cambridge topics. And the next or every other session or live stream that we do will be more language focused. So we'll focus on a little bit of grammar, maybe some pronunciation, maybe some collocations, maybe some phrasal verbs. So it will be a more general focus on aspects of language that we hope will be useful for you in your English studies. Hi, Concha. Concha's with us. Good to see you here,
Hello,
Concha, in the
Concha.
chat.
Hello. And I see we've also been joined by Jacqueline from France.
Bonjour.
And Romy from Argentina. Hello.
Hola.
That's nice to see you. Nice to see you again, Concha, too. Yes. So this is our plan. We thought we will try this out until Christmas, and we'll see if you like it. And of course, remember, we're always open to suggestions. So if there's any things that you want, please tell us, because we're here for you, really. We enjoy working together, Craig and I, but we do enjoy, trying to help you guys out there with your English. So whatever we can help you with, we would like to try to use this format, this live stream class in that sense.
Absolutely. And if you have just joined us, say hello in the chat. People are joining as we're speaking. And as Lynn just said, we're going to look at tourism. Is it a blessing or a curse? So looking at it from both sides, the negative and the positive, and also looking at tourism from the holiday makers, the people that actually are tourists and go to places, and also the people who receive tourism. So the people who work in the tourist industry, work in hotels, restaurants, etc. We'll look at the pros and cons as well for them.
And of course, for all speaking and writing topics, it's important to have both sides of the argument. So you need the pros and the cons. But notice as well that vocabulary, blessing or a curse, because that's an alternative way of saying, well, it can be a blessing or it can be a curse. You can also say, well, it can be good, but it could be bad. Or you can say, well, there are advantages and disadvantages. So that's another phrase that you can use to avoid repeating yourself when you're saying things. Yeah.
Alice joined us from Mexico. Long time no see, Alice. It's been
hello.
a long time. She was a student in my class before we started the live stream. And
I see. Just going straight back on.
I haven't seen Ali for at least 15 minutes. I know Ali is a keen tourist, so she loves traveling and she's been to some wonderful places. So hopefully, Ali, you'll enjoy this lesson. Let's kick off with some vocabulary.
Yes, just a little bit of vocabulary, because we'll probably be using this a lot. Now, these words, tourism, sometimes other language learners have problems with that, because it has actually a diphthong in there that's very unusual for many languages. It's ua, and so we say tourism, tourist. So tourism is obviously the general topic. Tourist, or the industry. Tourist is the person who does it. Then we have again touristy, and the touristy is it's the adjective, really, isn't it? We also have another adjective, which is touristic. When we say touristy, it's a bit touristy. It's usually a little bit negative, I think. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, it's also more informal. I think
It's
touristic
more
would be the more
informal.
neutral, more formal maybe, and
Exactly.
touristy.
Of
Yeah, it's a bit touristy. You
It's
usually
a
get
bit
a bit
loaded
before it.
with
Yeah, it's
negative, yes.
a bit
Or people
touristy.
say it's not too touristy. So touristy has that negative element too, but touristic is pretty neutral and more formal, as he said. Sometimes you'll hear people talking about over tourism. That's a concept now. Okay, so we talk about the industry of tourism, but we also talk about the effects of over tourism. Another type of tourism is ecotourism that you might have heard about, and that is tourism
You
that's,
say echo, I say eco.
you say eco.
Eco,
Okay.
interesting.
Eco.
Ecotourism.
And maybe you're right. It's eco. Maybe
I
I'm just
think
being
both. I think
Spanglish
both
there.
are.
Ecotourism.
I think both are possible.
Ecotourism, and that's of course people who are very concerned about the environment and they don't want to damage the environment. So, and they also want a kind of tourism that's more sustainable, maybe sustainable, which means that it's not going to damage the place, but it's going to enrich the place, and it's not going to be there's not going to be over tourism, which can be damaging. And then I've also added a couple of other words there: swarming and overrun with tourists. Would you like to explain those, Craig?
Yeah, when I look at the word swarm, I think of bees, lots of bees together, a big collection of bees. If you can imagine tourists like bees going to one place, you could also say it's really crowded. You've probably come across that word before. If a marketplace is crowded or a beach is crowded, then it's full of people. Swarming is negative. If it's swarming with tourists, then it's not a good thing. There are too many people.
I think ants as well, little ants. You said
Yes.
bees, and I think of ants because suddenly you see ants when they're all over everything. That's the idea that everybody's moving and it's very full. The pronunciation we have to watch as well with swarming. Even though it's written with an A, the pronunciation is O, swarming, not swarming, swarming. Swarming.
Swarming, and overrun with tourists is very similar. It's just too many tourists, and obviously that's not sustainable.
Okay.
Moving on, then we've got some more here. Trip and travel are often confused. Travel is usually a verb. It can be a noun if you think of Gulliver's Travels, for example, or my travels to Africa, but it's usually a verb. So I don't travel very often. I travel once a year, but trip is probably the one you want to use when you want a noun. So I'm going on a trip next month, or I'm going on a business trip, which is here, going on a trip and going on a journey. Trip and journey are also confusing sometimes because journey is usually just from one place to another place. For example, the journey from Valencia, where I live, to Madrid takes about 2 hours by train. How long is the journey? How long does it take you? Which is different from a trip because a trip might have many journeys inside it. So there's the journey to the airport, then there's the journey from one place to another place. Do you want to do the others, Lynn?
Yeah, so holiday makers is another word for tourists. They are people who are on holiday, so they don't live in the area where they are staying. Visitors is another alternative for holiday makers. You'll see that we're giving you lots of synonyms because, of course, in the writing or in the speaking, you don't want to keep repeating yourself. And you will get more marks if you can use paraphrases of things. So holiday makers, visitors, tourists, foreigners. Now, again, that's a tricky one to
Oh,
pronounce.
that's very tricky, isn't it? Foreigners.
Foreigners. Foreigners. Foreigners means people who are not of the local nationality. So anybody who is from abroad, we have that word abroad, abroad, which I didn't put here. And abroad is another country to yours. And so People from abroad, obviously in your country, are foreigners. And sometimes we make a distinction between foreign tourists and domestic tourists. Domestic tourists are of the nationality of the country that they're visiting. So, for example, Craig and I live in Valencia. It's a bit tricky because we're English, aren't we? So we're also foreigners. But we feel that we're Spanish because we've been here a long time. So if Craig and I go to Barcelona, I would like to be classified as a domestic tourist rather than a foreign tourist. Would you?
Yeah, because we're permanent residents. So
because we're permanent residents, that's right.
We would be tourists. Oh, Denise is here. Now, Denise, hi, Denise. She's from Greece and she works in tourism.
Oh, great.
And she has a shop on a lovely Greek island. So she would probably be very aware of tourists swarming around, for example.
Well, you'll be telling
overrun.
us. Well, you'll be telling us those things now, Denise, because we have now the first question, don't we? So we're going to ask you guys to think, because remember, this is a topic-based class, and you have to be able, possibly, if you're doing an exam, you need to generate ideas very quickly. So we're going to ask you now, can you write 3 positive things? Hang on a second. That have you got the more detailed question, Craig? Because that's too general.
No.
No.
But I can
Well,
change
can
it.
you take it away? Can you take it away? You listen
Okay.
to me, everybody. I want 3 positive things about the benefits of traveling for you. So when you are a tourist, what are the 3 benefits of traveling for you? Why do you want to be a tourist? Presuming you do. I think most people do at some point. We've been tourists. And what are the three motivating factors for you? What are the 3 things that you get out of tourism? If you can put them down in the chat, and then we'll share these ideas with everybody, because the idea is to generate more ideas, of course. So Rosario's already written to know new people and places. Yeah. I agree with that. Would you, Craig? Yeah.
Yes, I mean that's one of the wonderful things about tourism. Even though the world feels sometimes like it's getting smaller and the cultures are not so different as they used to be, perhaps, I think there are still some lovely places where you can go and learn about different culture, different people, different ways of life.
And I think too, for me, when I go traveling, it's the idea if you can connect with the culture in some way. Because I think sometimes there are 2 ways to see it. You can go and you can observe the culture, which is like a bit like looking in through the window. You can observe the culture, which is also enriching, I think, as on an individual level, isn't it? But it's lovely as well if you can actually connect with the culture in some way. I don't know, by sharing food with people from the area, or sharing an experience, or sharing some time with people who are from the local areas. I think that's lovely. That's one of the big buzzes for me when I go traveling, is if I can actually connect with the culture in some way.
Yeah, and also if you can speak a little bit of the local language, then that opens other doors for you to be able to speak to people and get to know how they live, what food they eat, and what they enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Conscious as being in contact with people of other countries,
To know,
or to get to know different cultures. Yeah, Denise, knowing other cultures.
I think also, and if we take that idea about knowing other cultures, would you agree that you think, like, why do we want to get to know other cultures? And I think it's because when we get to see other cultures, we actually begin to understand our own culture. We kind of live, don't we, in our own culture, and we're not really aware of it. It's that we take it all for granted, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when you see other cultures, it makes your own culture very apparent, very visible. And then of course you start doing this compare, don't you? You know,
Yeah.
like, oh, I like it the way we do it, or oh, I don't like, they do it much better than we do it.
I
Have
can't
you had
believe
that
these.
experience?
I can't believe these Spanish people eat so late at night. Was a comment my friend made in July when I was traveling with him. My English friend
Yeah.
said, "I can't, why are they eating at 11 p.m. in the evening? It doesn't make sense." So yeah, different differences. Hello, Nacho. Nacho's with us. Good to see you. Knowledge of new cultures, new languages, and different people. Yeah.
And different people. That's right.
And Ale, to know different cultures, understand your place in the bigger world.
In the bigger world, yeah. And I think that that's a really important point. I like that one, Ali, because I think also when you do travel, you begin to realize as well your place. And it's much smaller than you initially imagine. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Would you say that? Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Trying
Have
a
you
different food
uh-huh,
as well.
different foods? Have you got any more, Craig? Did you think of any more than the
Any
ones
more?
we've written?
I like traveling, and it's different to what people have been saying. It doesn't really matter sometimes. Well, that's not true. It does matter where I go. But one thing I love about traveling and getting outside of my comfort zone and outside of my habits and routines is that you take a step back and you see the life you have where you permanently live on a day-to-day basis. You see it in a different way, especially if you go to a country where the traditions are different, maybe the income of the people is different, and you just get a different perspective. And I always come back really appreciating my life that I have.
Yes.
So it's nice to take a step back, step out of your life and your routine and look at it like from above, because you're in a different culture and different environment. I find that really refreshing.
So that's like getting the perspective, isn't it? We would kind of say that. I also put down here a very obvious one, maybe not for Spanish people, but you know, lots of people are tourists because they're looking for the sun or they're looking for the cold. You know, people who live in very cold climates, they're desperate for some sunshine. And I mean, that's a big driver of tourism in Spain. Many English people come to Spain because they are desperate for some sunshine. Same for the Germans. And then I suppose there's the opposite effect of it as well. Some people who live in hotter climates, they crave the cold. Could you
Yeah.
write? I'll put. Can you put crave in there? Because that's maybe a word that's not really sure. They crave the cold, which means they have this desire and they really, really want the different climate. So I
Yep.
think we also we go for the people, the culture, but sometimes we go for the weather
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially English people who are rained on for 10 months of the year. When they come to
Yes.
Spain, they love the sunshine.
Uh-huh.
Gallo Javier's asking, hi, did you say take for granted?
For granted.
If you take something for granted, then you don't appreciate it, because sometimes when we have things and we get used to them, we get accustomed to them, we stop appreciating them. And it's
Or we
nice
think they're
to,
just normal, and we don't recognize them anymore. It's almost as if we don't see them anymore. You can also take somebody for granted. So often in long relationships between husbands and wives, sometimes they complain that they are taking each other for granted and they are no longer appreciating the effort that the other person is putting into the relationship. So you can take somebody for granted or you can take something for granted as well. Another person mentioned, I can't remember who it was in the chat, but they also said architecture. That was
yes,
Denise.
Denise, yeah.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting element. Do you travel for architecture, Craig?
No.
No. Uh-huh.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if I see beautiful architecture, then I appreciate it, especially if the architecture of the place or city creates a particular atmosphere, then I appreciate that. there's only one building I think that's really, really impressed me, and that was the Taj Mahal in India many
Lots
years
of people
ago.
say that. I've
It
never
was the
seen that.
it stopped me in my tracks. I went,
Mm-hmm.
wow! It was such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful building, and that's the only building that's really sort of gone above my expectations. Because you
Yeah,
hear lots of things like, oh, the Eiffel Tower, and you see it and you think, yeah, it's lovely, it's nice, but you expected something maybe a bit more. But the Taj
yeah.
Mahal was incredible.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I've got some
Okay,
more benefits, you know.
tell
I'll
us.
tell you
I
some
have,
more.
yeah.
Well, I think, you know, a lot of people do tourism because if you've got kids, it's like I saw it as kind of part of their education. You know, I took my kids to different places because I wanted them to also appreciate that perspective on their own life and also to understand their place in the world. So I think some people go traveling because they see it's an important part of education as
Hmm.
well, you know,
Yeah.
of their own education or the education of people they're responsible for as well.
Did you
Uh-huh.
travel with them when they were very young?
Yes, I did, but that was not really for their education. That was for necessity, so they could see my parents because my parents live in
Ah,
New
okay.
Zealand.
Yeah.
So I did travel with them when they were very, very young, but that was more because of family reunions. Yeah. But I
Mm,
mean, we did want them to see certain things and the world, you know, a little bit. Uh-huh.
yeah. Hmm.
And
What else have
somebody
you got?
said, Rosario said, sometimes people travel to look for beautiful scenery. Absolutely. And different kinds of environments, you know, like some people want to see mountains, for example, if they live in very flat areas, or some people travel because they don't have beaches and they don't live near the sea.
Hmm.
Um, so absolutely, I think the environment is a big motivator in attracting us. One
Absolutely.
last thing I had was do you think that some people, I'm not sure whether this is true or not, but I have observed this. But do you think that some people travel because everybody else is?
Possibly. Yeah. Because or maybe like if they're in a relationship or marriage, maybe one of the people want to travel, and and the other one doesn't. So
Uh-huh.
maybe they're traveling just to not to take the other person for granted, as we said.
Yeah, okay.
So they
So
want to
to
make the
like
other
share
one happy.
happy,
Um,
so they do it, yeah. And I think with social media now, like I'm very aware, do you know the word bucket list? You know bucket list,
yes,
Craig. I don't
of
know if the other
course.
people know bucket lists. A bucket list is something traditionally, originally, it was if you were terminally ill and
Or
you
just getting old.
or just getting older, you had a bucket list, which was a list of things you wanted to do or experience before you died. But now on social media, it's very popular for very young people to have bucket lists. And they seem to be traveling around the world, ticking off places.
Yeah, it's also
Um,
tied very strongly to social media and Instagram. So
yeah.
you want to have that Instagram photo in front of the Taj Mahal or in front of the
Uh,
Eiffel Tower so that it goes on Instagram. Yeah.
so it kinds of like, so maybe those people who do that, maybe they're traveling because they feel it sort of adds to their own identity in some way. Would you say
Yeah, I
that
think
that
so.
could be? Yeah, I don't know what you guys think. If you think that's, or am I just talking a load of rubbish? You can,
No,
you
I think
can tell
that's
us.
I think I agree with you. I think that's true. Nacho
Yeah.
says the Alhambra in Granada is a nice visit. It's nice to visit at
Uh-huh.
least once in a
Uh-huh.
lifetime. Once in a
Yeah,
lifetime.
actually, what you're touching on there, Nacho, is of course history. That's another reason to travel. Some people do travel because they're very interested in history
Hmm.
and archaeology or world history. And yeah, I think I'm like, if Nacho likes that, I think I am. When I go to places, I really want to actually find out about the history.
Hmm. Yeah, me too.
It's a big thing.
Like
Hmm.
Concha says, traveling opens our minds.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, shall we move
Right.
to the
Sure.
next?
So
question.
now you have to think, because again, this is idea generation. Now you have to write 3 positive things about the benefits of tourism in the places where it happens. So now we're looking for benefits of tourism in the tourist places, not for the travelers, but for the places where tourism happens. Now, I'm sure that is it Denise? Is it who has the place in Greece? You're somebody working in the tourism industry. If you have a shop,
Yeah.
So please tell us, what are the benefits? So can you guys try to brainstorm some ideas about the benefits of tourism in the places where it happens? Mm-hmm.
We'll see what you think. We can certainly see the effect. Well, not so much here in Valencia, although I do see tourists here in the summer. But when I travel down to see my sister, and she lives further down the coast of Spain here on the east coast, I can definitely see the benefits in her area as well as the drawbacks. And we'll come on to the drawbacks and the disadvantages in a few minutes.
Yeah, we're going to do those separately. So for the moment, we're only positive things for the moment.
We're thinking positively.
Positive.
First the good news, then the bad news.
Yeah. Well, maybe you want to give a couple of ideas, Craig, while people are thinking. So the positive.
Well, obviously, the obvious one is the money that comes in. I mean, lots of money comes in through tourism. It stimulates the economy. There's a phrase for you, to stimulate the economy, to bring money in. And obviously, where we are here in Spain, there are people who buy property here. So they're not only spending money on shopping and furniture and other things like that in restaurants and bars, but they're always getting maybe their pension transferred from other countries if they've moved here permanently. So there's that money coming in to the country's economy.
Yeah, and I was in the summer, I went to Peru, and the guides in Peru told me that, you know, they're very happy to have tourism because it is stimulating their economy a lot. And they needed that after COVID, and also after. I mean, Peru is a developing country, and it's still, there's a lot of people who don't have jobs. So the tourism is very important. It's a very important, and it was in Spain, and it is in Spain. Tourism is a massive important sector of employment, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's
I just
great.
want to say hello to my friend Rita, who's joined us, and I'm pleased to hear that it's nicer listening to us than to a political debate. That's nice. That's nice to know, Rita. I'm very happy. So you're welcome. I'm pleased.
We're not trying to get elected, are we?
Well, I'm pleased we've dragged you away from your political debate on TV over there in Italy.
Yeah. That's great.
Rita, do you live in an area that's popular with tourists? I can't remember where you are in Italy. I think you're in the north, but I might be mistaken. Rosario says that increases the incomes in shops, hotels, and restaurants. That's very true. More jobs for everyone, really. I mean, it's as I said, it stimulates the economy. Most people benefit from tourism financially. Development in different areas, infrastructure. I think we had that on the list, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I think that is important because, of course, when tourists come, you usually find that the roads and the services, the bus services, the transport systems, they all benefit. And that benefits local people too, because maybe before their town was quite small and they didn't actually have money to invest in roads and access and transport. And that really does it makes a massive change on the infrastructure of a place. Yeah.
Did you notice that in Peru where you were? Did you notice the infrastructure?
No, the infrastructure hasn't quite. The roads weren't very good, not yet. But you do see that, for example, the airports. There's more airports. There's a new airport being built outside Cusco, and there is definitely a lot of people using the roads. I'm sure the roads will get better. It will get better soon. One thing I noticed, though, this is another thing, is that I thought tourism often really benefits the, let's say, the upkeep of the cultural heritage of a place. That's what I saw very much in Peru, because Peru has, of course, lots of history with the Incas and Inca ruins. And Ignacio mentioned the Alhambra in Spain, for example. Granada has got these fantastic ruins. And of course, it's very expensive for governments to maintain that cultural heritage. And if you have tourism, you find that there is more money to be spent on that because, of course, the cultural heritage is the draw, isn't it, for the tourists? So I think sometimes people say it damages the environment, but in terms of cultural heritage, often for sites, certainly like ruins and castles and buildings, you usually find that tourism is the thing that's keeping them alive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
you know.
It's keeping the economy alive. Yeah.
Well, it's not keeping not just the economy, but the buildings themselves,
Yeah.
the history. You know, it's keeping the history of a place alive. Yeah.
Although there is a reverse side to that. There is a downside, but we'll come on to the downsides in a minute.
Yeah. Another thing, if I can add, because Denise has said interacting with different cultures. And of course, that is a benefit, isn't it, as well? Because it makes the local place less insular. So the benefits of like getting the right perspective or getting a good perspective of your place in the world, that is there. Would you think that works both ways, doesn't it, for the place and the...
Yeah, absolutely. Opens a place up to the outside world. I mean, some local people might not appreciate that, but it's definitely a plus for others. Meeting people from other walks of life, from other countries, then it opens the minds of the local people culturally as well.
It helps them also with language. All the people who work in tourism who learn English, for example.
Exactly.
So it makes them more linguistically capable to,
I often say, I mean, if you're lucky enough to live in a country that does have a lot of English tourists in a certain area, go there and practice your English with them. It's cheaper than going abroad.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, should we get to the negatives?
Okay, you were dying to get to the negatives, weren't you?
Well, balance. We've got to be balanced here.
We've got to be balanced, yeah.
So for balance.
Okay, so what are the 3 drawbacks of tourism for us as tourists? I bet nobody ever thinks about that one. Because when I wrote that question, I thought that's not what you think of. You always think about the drawbacks for the places, but do you ever think about the drawbacks for you going as a tourist to places? That's a bit trickier. So get your thinking caps on, everybody. Start thinking and writing.
And I've added a couple of things to the list that you prepared as well.
There
are quite a few.
There's quite a lot of drawbacks, actually, for tourism as tourists. Tell me, Craig. Tell me one that you.
Well, before we look at that, while people are thinking, this is, by the way, something you should do if you are writing for a Cambridge exam. Just spend 5 minutes or so, no more than 10, but maybe about 5 minutes, making 2 lists. If you're writing an essay, for example, in a Cambridge exam, it's a really good idea to get the pros and the cons, to look at the argument from both sides. So you should be doing this just in note form. 2 columns, advantages, disadvantages, a plus and a minus, and then just quickly list a few things for each side. And then all you need to do in the body of your essay, the main part of your essay, is just connect your ideas.
And to compare and contrast, because that's what they really like you to do. They're always liking you to compare and contrast.
Exactly.
So you can take a side if you like, if you think tourism is wonderful, and you can still do that, but you must contrast it with or mention the drawbacks that could be seen by other people, or maybe you feel that the drawbacks are outweighed by the advantages.
Yeah. At the end of your essay, just tie it all together and give your own opinion. So everybody here in the class today are just you're all
you're convinced that you love being a tourist. There's
Only
no
positive
negatives, only
things, no
positives for
negatives.
you. Come on then, Craig, tell us one. Tell us a negative one.
Well, the obvious drawback is expense, isn't it? I mean, I went on holiday this year in August, and I look at my bank account when I came back, and it's like this. I've spent so much money. So
Uh,
yeah, now you have to build up the bank account again or pay off your credit card debt
yeah.
because you spent a lot of money on holidays. So, if you do go on holiday locally and just take the car and go somewhere in your country, for example, it
Uh,
could work out a lot cheaper than flying abroad to maybe a more expensive place. So cost is definitely something
it's
that needs to
definitely a
be considered.
yeah, I agree. Another one I thought was stress, because a lot of people think that they're going on holiday to have a rest from work, and then they go on holiday and they don't really rest. They're dashing to this monument and to that site. They're going sightseeing, and they are in overcrowded places, and it's quite stressful. It's hard to find restaurants or bars that have free tables, and they might get sunburned. Yeah, and actually they come back in a
Food poisoning.
in a worse state than when they went.
I've got
So
to
sometimes it's not great for your physical condition to be a
I've got
tourist.
I've got to
Sometimes it's
ask
better
you,
to
Lynn.
rest at home.
I've got
Uh-huh.
to ask you on that. Are you the kind of person who does sort of tick things off a list? Are you a really busy tourist where you got like an itinerary and you're moving around constantly, making the most of your time, or are you more
Uh,
relaxed and chilled and
uh-huh.
you just want to
I
take a step
think
back?
really I'm somewhere in the middle. I
Okay.
wouldn't like to, for example, to travel all the way to Peru to go to a beach. I wouldn't do that because it's just too far. So my trip to Peru was quite full, I have to say, with
And
lots of
cultural,
things.
if I
But
understand.
it was cultural. I went with guides all the time, so we had good, excellent guides in Peru. I can really recommend them. And of course, through the guides, you actually met people, and you learned a lot about history and the place. But it was busy. But I think that's to do with the fact that Peru is so far away from here. So if you're going to spend so much money on the flight, then of course you want to take advantage of your time there.
Of course.
But I'm not a person who likes to tick things off. Like, I'm quite happy to miss things. I don't have to see the Eiffel Tower if I go to Paris,
Yeah.
because you've kind of, everybody's seen it on pictures anyway. So
Yeah. You've
you
seen it
know,
on the TV.
uh,
You know what it looks like. Just avoid the
yeah,
tourists.
yeah.
Camino says, "Hi, Camino. I hate forgetting things at home. Yeah,
That is
you
a good one. Yeah.
you need a list, Camino. I have a list that a checklist before I go on holiday, and I make sure I've got my socks and my toothpaste and everything I
Uh-huh.
need, and I just go down the list and tick the boxes.
So there is physical discomfort, really, I suppose, Camino, if you forget things that you need. Yeah, there is that.
Yeah,
Ignacio's got a good few, huh? Dangerous
dangerous
places.
places, expensive
It's a
bills,
bills. Uh-huh.
and the tap water. Yeah,
Oh, yes.
could you drink the tap water in Peru? Is it
No,
drinkable?
no, no.
No,
You
it's a
had you
bottled
had to have
water.
bottled water. Well, boiled water actually. We tried to. I mean, when we were in towns, we had bottled water, but when we were in more like rural areas, we just boiled water and had boiled water. Uh-huh.
Also, Camino says the preparation is awful. Yes, my wife usually prepares our holidays, so I don't. You have to check flights, look for the best price. Sometimes the flights get cancelled. It can be a pain in the neck when you're
Yeah,
organising a holiday.
yeah.
What else do we have on the list? I have.
Well, go
Oh,
on.
I have one that's not on the list that you prepared. Lost luggage and flight
Oof.
delays.
Yes, yes.
These days, the many airline companies are just not reliable. You can get to your destination with no suitcase, and you have to live for 3 or 4 days, or 5 days, or longer without your clothes, and you have to buy clothes, and yeah, It's
Yeah.
just a hassle.
And the delays, I think now air traveling through airports now
Yeah.
in the last 20 years has just changed so much, and it's extremely stressful.
Yeah.
You have to be really careful in airports because they change gates, they lose the luggage, the connections don't work, and you have to be very prepared, don't you, now with, like, your travel insurance and knowing what you can do and what your rights are. And yeah, that is certainly flight travel can be, but of course, by traveling by car too, you can be in long delays in summer
Yeah.
season,
Yeah.
stuck in the car in traffic jams. So there are, I mean, you have an easier, more relaxed time if you stayed at home, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Denise has written, if you get sick in another country, and yeah, that is a big that can be a big downside, can't it? Because it
Yeah,
can be very expensive.
it's happened to
In
me. It's happened to my
Has
wife.
it?
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's not very
yeah.
nice.
No, 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 no.
But it shouldn't
And
stop. It shouldn't stop you traveling. I think you should still be able to travel. But
yeah, but
it's
I
a
mean, it can, if you have an accident and you can't fly home on the normal time and you get stuck in the country for like another 2 weeks or another 3 weeks, that can be really quite serious, and it can affect all of your life. You could affect your work when you go back, your job, your family, everything. So there is a risk involved, I suppose.
You're sounding very choppy. Has something changed with your internet connection?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think so.
And we can hear you, but you sound a bit choppy.
Oh, could just be me moving. I'll try to be. Is that better?
No.
No.
We'll carry on. We can hear you. We can hear you. It's just a bit choppy. So we're moving on then to the final discussion or the final question, which is, I don't actually have it here. So can
All
you
right.
tell
So
me, Lynn,
it's
and I'll
we
create a
now
banner
we
for it.
want to have the drawbacks of tourism in the places where it happens. So this
In
is
the
this is the
places
one
where
I
it
think that we all have
happens.
drawbacks for. So 3 drawbacks or 3 things about the drawbacks of tourism in the places where it happens. What's
Oh,
negative for the
Denise is going to have
places?
something to say about that for sure.
I think all of us do, really, because I think it's very much in the news right now, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's many ideas for drawbacks of tourism in the places. So can you tell us? Can you help us out here?
We'll give you a few minutes to write your suggestions and ideas. And if you are
Oh,
watching
Ale has
live,
given
let
a
us
lovely
know
word. Sorry.
who you are. If you are watching live, say hi. Let us know where you're from. Gentrification, lovely
Vacation.
word. Yes.
Beautiful, Ale. Are you going to explain what it is, Craig, or shall
Um,
I?
I think it's where you make things more modern, but also at the same time more expensive. So, whereas if you have a lovely beach fishing village that's not too expensive and with just local people, and suddenly it gets discovered and everybody starts visiting and they build hotels and they build these really expensive modern bars for drinks, then it just gets too expensive basically, even for the local people. And as I think you touched on, Lynn, that was a big problem this year in some Spanish resorts. There were protests in Barcelona and the Canary Islands because the prices were rising too much, because people couldn't find anywhere to live, because most of the flats were Airbnb, and people who lived in the city, they couldn't find anywhere to live. And I think I read a case about a doctor who worked, I think it was on
In
Tenerife.
Mallorca,
Was it
or
Mallorca?
Mallorca, and he lived in a caravan.
And he
Is
was
that?
living in a caravan because,
Yes.
as a doctor, he wasn't getting paid enough to afford the local tourist prices in the summer, which is ridiculous.
Yes. I suppose that's the effect of over tourism. And when we said before that, it can kind of really, tourism can help promote the local culture and traditions, because the focus of the area is to promote the local buildings, the local traditions, the local customs. But it is a kind of balance, isn't it? And sometimes if it starts to be too much tourism, then you actually find that the local culture disappears. And with gentrification, that is what happens to certain areas, because the local people who used to live there, who were the ones who were maintaining the traditions, they're the ones that are forced to move out. And so really it can have quite an overwhelming impact on the local culture and the local traditions, and it can change them completely. They kind of become like stereotype cultures and traditions. They're not real. The real local people don't live like that, and the real local people don't have those traditions. But it's just something kind of fictional, which is maintained for the benefit of the tourists.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah. Some more comments coming in. Crowded, natural, crowded,
Crowded.
crowded, crowded places, traffic jams, too much noise. Yeah. With the
Yeah.
discos and the bars and the kids. Denise also says noise, no available space, especially for parking, no parking spaces. And the tourists sometimes don't respect the places they visit. Yes, graffiti and
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. And I think also another one is that, again, it damages the local patterns of economy. I've noticed this in some areas of Valencia, where there were like people lived in areas in Valencia city, but then the type of businesses that are around, like before there might have been a little local shop and a fruit shop and like the local businesses which supplied the people, the demand suddenly is for businesses to supply the tourists. That's kind of gentrification, but it's it's the idea that the whole pattern of the economy changes, and it becomes wholly focused on tourism. And then of course that's also a negative for employment, because the type of employment maybe is no longer, there is no variety of employment for the people. It's only in tourism, like local fishermen, for example, stop fishing, or because they can make more money in tourism. So the fishing industry or business in a local town disappears.
And also, we mentioned before about the advantages of having English tourists, for example, speaking English, where you could go and practice and improve your English. That has a flip side, and I've seen it here where my sister lives, where the English people who live here permanently, or even the tourists who come to visit during the tourist season, they expect the locals to speak English, and they open up businesses sometimes. So I've had an experience where my wife and I have gone into a restaurant or a bar and ordered in Spanish, but the business owner doesn't speak any Spanish
Yeah.
because they're there to service the tourists and the English. So that can be a big problem. You don't expect your local community to be overrun by
Yes.
tourism to the point where the business owners only speak English and you can't communicate in your own language in your own country.
I guess as a summary, we could say it's a balancing act.
Oh, that's a good one. I'll put
That's
that
a
in
nice little phrase for you. You could say really it's a
chat.
balancing act, because I think it is important that tourism is managed, isn't it, wisely in the place where it is. Because if it, as you said before, if it flips too much to one side, it can be very negative for all concerned. Okay.
Right. So shall we wrap? We've got about 5 minutes. What we're going to do now is to give you an example of what you might have to do if you're taking a Cambridge exam and you get one of the speaking questions on this topic of tourism.
Uh-huh. Now, I know not all of you are doing exams, but I think it's useful for you to listen, because what we've done during this class is we've generated a lot of ideas. I hope
And
you can remember
vocabulary.
them, Craig,
No.
and vocabulary. Okay. And in actual fact, in Cambridge exams, usually there's a part of the exam where two people you have to speak together for 2 minutes, discuss a topic, and then you have 1 minute to decide on the answer to a question. This is called the collaborative task. And obviously, it's taken us 40 minutes to discuss all of this. So you see, there's plenty of things to say. But funnily enough, some people really do find that they go blank in the exam and they have no ideas, and
Yeah.
they just repeat themselves all the time,
Yeah.
which is something that you have to try to avoid. So Craig and I are just going to do now, we're going to play students. We'll probably try to be about C1 level, do you think?
Well,
Yeah, for this one.
let's not be over ambitious.
Well, we won't be going at the rate with which we shall try to modify our language a little bit, slow down a little bit, just to
Hopefully
give
we'll
you a
pass.
feeling of how you can incorporate the ideas that we've said in a Cambridge task. So I have to share my screen now, don't I, Craig? Yeah.
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 And while you're listening to us, make sure that you notice how we're dealing with the task. So we won't reach a decision, I hope, too quickly, because that comes in the second part. We're going to ask our partner's opinions, give our opinions, ask their opinion, agree and disagree, and also move the task forward. So listen for us doing that as we go through the test. It's only 3 minutes. It's not very long.
It's not very long. Here we go then. Okay. Are you sharing then, Craig?
Yes,
Yeah.
everyone can see that.
Okay.
So how does tourism affect these areas of life? Can you see it, Lynn? Can you see
Yes,
the
I can see
rubric?
it now. Yes, I can as well.
Okay, so what do you think? Let's start
Are
with...
you starting the timer?
let's start the timer.
I'll give the
Okay.
instruction. The examiner usually says tourism is a popular topic nowadays. And often people want to know, how does tourism affect different areas of life? Here are some ideas they think about and a question for you to discuss. But first you have some time to look at the task, and then they usually give you like 15 seconds to look at that. And then they'll say, talk together about how tourism affects these different areas of life. Talk together. Would you like to start, or shall I, Craig?
Well, let's look at the environment first,
Yeah,
because
okay.
obviously if you're flying somewhere, then you're burning fossil fuels, and that's not good for the environment, is it? That's polluting.
That's true. And also sometimes in little islands, maybe there's a lot of cars from tourists and it causes a lot of pollution. But on the other hand, sometimes it's good for the environment, because maybe in small villages, the local people can't afford to look after the environment. And if they attract tourism, they often maintain, old castles or old buildings or facilities. So sometimes tourism can be positive for the environment too, I think.
Yes, I agree with that. I've seen that in my local area as well. Let's move on to employment, because obviously if there is a flourishing tourism industry in your area, that's going to create jobs. And that's a good thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think most people do perceive it as good, but I have heard arguments saying that some of the jobs are not very high quality jobs, and also the jobs are seasonal. So sometimes they're only in the summer and then not in the winter. So I think it does, it is good for employment in the sense that it creates jobs, but I'm not sure whether it's good in the long term for it's not good quality jobs, that can sustain people.
Yeah, that's also true. What do you think about language? Because if you do get English speakers in your area, you can practice with them. Obviously, you might not have a good level of English, but at least you could try and speak to tourists who come to
Yeah.
visit your area.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's a good thing, really. It's a win-win situation for the tourists and the local people because they can like extend their capacities to speak more than one language. And I think that that's really good. It's good for international understanding and it's also good for your brain, you know?
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide which of these areas is affected the most in the long term? Talk together. Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
That's a difficult question. Would you like to go first?
Well, I think maybe the environment we don't really know because I think sometimes people preserve it and sometimes people abuse it. So I don't think I think we can ignore the environment.
We
I
haven't
think
spoke. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. We haven't really spoken about culture or happiness. I think happiness is also quite subjective, but I'm thinking maybe culture is the thing that is impacted the most in the long term because culture changes all the time. So if we are a globalized world and people are moving to different places, culture will be affected. Culture is going to change.
If I can jump in here, I think I would disagree. I would go with employment because
Oh,
if the tourism is sustainable and it continues over time, then I think those seasonal jobs would extend, and also there are businesses that can earn enough money during the tourist season to sustain them throughout the year. Do you agree with that?
yeah. Maybe you're right because possibly culture. It depends how much they interact with one another, doesn't it? And there are some
Yes.
tourist areas where there is little interaction between people. So probably you're right. I think, yeah, employment maybe is the one that's going to be affected the most.
And that's the end of the test. I think we managed to agree.
All right. Okay, I'll stop the share now.
So that's
Okay.
how you might want to approach the Cambridge speaking task at C1 or even at B2 with maybe slightly a lower level language. We did use some advanced
We
language
did
there.
use some advanced language. You used a very nice phrase. It's flourishing, you said. I like that.
2 points.
2 points for Craig. I think he was better, don't you think?
It's not a competition. We're
It's
not
not a competition,
comparing.
no.
No. Nacho says that he thinks we passed.
Thank you, Nacho. Thank you.
So anyway, that's what we are thinking of doing every second live stream. So obviously next time we'll do a very similar live stream, but it will be focused obviously on a different vocabulary area from the Cambridge speaking and writing papers. And then next time we meet, Lynn, we'll maybe do a bit of grammar or language focus or
Yeah,
something.
we'll do something that's more language focused next time. And maybe just if anybody is here interested in doing exams, another practice activity that you might want to do, because of course you couldn't do the speaking here live with us, but what you can do, is take maybe the title of our class today, which was "Is tourism a blessing or a curse?" And maybe you just want to try to write something discussing the pros and cons and developing your ideas and trying to connect the different ideas that were brainstormed today so that you don't just stick with, yeah, it's good because everybody likes tourism, or no, it's bad because there's too many people. So that the discussion doesn't stay at that superficial level, but maybe you can try to formulate a paragraph expressing your opinion about it.
And if you want to
Which
have it
is
checked, you could go
important.
to Cambridge Write and Improve, which is their
Yeah.
AI system. I put it in the chat for you. So you can check with them and you'll get AI feedback, which is
Yeah.
obviously not the same as a live teacher, but it is quite effective. It's getting better all
Yeah.
the time. So you could try writeandimprove.com by
It's
Cambridge.
Yeah, I think it's certainly useful that AI it will pick up language errors. Yeah, it might not pick up errors of style or organization, but it will pick up language errors. So it's good. It'll help you improve your language control.
And of course, if you want a real flesh and blood teacher, you could always go to Lynne's website.
Oh yeah, well you're not offering exam. Well, you've got exam material, haven't you, on Mention Inglés?
Yeah, I also, well, you go first and explain what you
Yes.
do, and then
Well, I'm an exam teacher, so as well. I mean, I teach lots of other things, but I also do exam preparation. So if you are really looking for exam preparation, you can come to me at putitlikethis.com, and I will be able to train you in the techniques to pass the exam. And Craig?
If you want, I focus more on conversation. So there are a couple of conversation students in here watching this. So thank you for being part of the audience today. And if you are interested in joining the next course, which is starting next in 2 weeks' time, then go to the website englishcraig.com, where you can book a consultation with me for about 10 minutes, and we'll have a chat. And I'll let you know the dates and the times according to your English level. EnglishCraig.com. And of course, Mention Inglés is where you can study if you're a Spanish speaker. And whatever language is your mother tongue, you can listen to the podcast at inglespodcast.com.
You have so many websites. It's amazing.
I know. Yes, thank
He's
you,
like
Concha.
Amazon.
Thank you, Concha. It's lovely to see you here. And hope to see you again next time. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
And thank you for your comments, everybody. You participated really well today. Thank you. Well done.
Good job, everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.